When we turned 25, I thought Kelly and I had the perfect marriage. I'm Mickey O'Sullivan, full-blooded Irish. Both sets of grandparents came from Ireland, and I have lightly freckled bright red hair, now with gray strands. Kelly is also full Irish, as I met and married her while researching my ancestors in Ireland. She's a fiery, well-read little minx who can go from an absolute cutie to a total she-devil in about a nanosecond. Anyway, I was pretty shy in school, never dated much, and spent most of my time studying or running cross-country. Also, when we went to Catholic school, it was drilled into our heads that sexual relations were only possible after marriage. I went to college, but after my first year of electrical engineering, I dropped out and joined the Air Force. While I was at Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany, working on the avionics of the incoming fighters and bombers, I decided to go to Ireland and find relatives there. I received a copy of my family tree that my mother received from my Aunt Irene. After meeting a few of my relatives, I started looking for hunters. I had a great-great-grandmother or great-great-grandmother, I'm not sure now, but she married the king of the Hunter clan only to die in childbirth with the child. I really had nothing to do with them, but wanted to check them out. During dinner in a small pub in Hunterton, 4 beautiful young women walked in dressed to kill. After all, it was Saturday evening. This gorgeous redhead in a micro-mini looked at me every now and then whispered something to her friends. Then the other 3 left, and she came up to me and said, "Hey, handsome, want to buy a horny girl a drink and get lucky?" Technically, I was still a virgin, as I was saving myself up for my wedding night, and when we got to Kelly's little cottage, I told her so. I said we could do anything other than full sex, and she said she was fine with that. Well, she pleasured me, then she came closer, and we kissed deeply. Then something went wrong, and we had sex. Kelly fell forward, breathing heavily and holding me tightly. I brushed her crimson hair out of her face and said, "Oh, Kelly, I told you I was saving myself for the girl I was going to marry, didn't I? Why did you do it?" Kelly opened her eyes, smiled at me with an almost angelic look and said, "Mickey, this is easy to fix, just marry me." I don't know why, but I asked her, "How many guys have you been with?" Kelly gave me a disapproving look, then pulled away and said, "It's really none of your business, Mickey O'Sullivan, but it seemed like it was enough to teach me how to please you, or do you think women are just do they know how to do all this naturally?" I decided I better shut up and get out of the mess I just made, so I pulled her to the center of the bed and had sex with her. I rolled off of her and was caressing her heaving breasts when she looked at me and said, "Are you still going to lie to me that you were a virgin when you walked in here?" Anyway, I visited Kelly every weekend for the next few months and fell head over heels in love with her. I even bought a set of rings. Then one weekend she asked me to bring my dress uniform, and we went to her great-uncle Duncan's house where I met the whole family, her parents, her older brother and sister, and her younger sister Isabella, who was 11 years younger than Kelly. Isabella was very shy, but I spent a lot of time with her and even took her to dances with her feet on my shoes. She kept herself under control, and I could see that Kelly and her parents were very pleased with my actions. Plus, I really liked it. That evening, as the celebrations were winding down, I proposed to Kelly and she accepted. We got married and moved to an apartment near the base. Because she got sick and the doctor prescribed her antibiotics, which we didn't know negated the effect of her birth control pills, Kelly gave birth to Connor O'Sullivan a little over a year after we got married. Due to her small stature and narrow birth canal, she had to have a cesarean section. She hated the scar, but I told her we could save up for plastic surgery when she stopped having children. I was transferred back to the States because of an idea I had sent for a new design to improve the 3-dot low-altitude radar, and they wanted me to work with the engineers at Edwards Air Force Base in California. My parents often took Connor with them, so Kelly and I took a 4-day vacation, went to Las Vegas, and partied like crazy. Kelly somehow forgot her birth control pills, and 9 months later, we were in the hospital with Kelly in labor. This time, she wanted to try a natural birth. After 48 hours of severe pain, she finally told the obgyn to get the operating room ready, and soon I was holding my red-haired princess, Erin, in my arms. She was an exact copy of Kelly, flaming red hair and a few freckles on her cheeks and back. What I didn't know was that Kelly was in so much pain that she told her doctor to tie her tubes while he was there, as she never wanted to be in that much pain again. It wasn't until almost 2 years later that she finally told me about it. Life was going pretty well, and I went back to night school and got a degree in electrical engineering. What was funny was that the classes were very redundant compared to what I had been doing in the service for years, so I challenged myself to a few classes, flew, and completed my degree in just 2 years. Kelly helped me study a little and also got me interested in electrical engineering and started evening classes. Luckily, I kept all my old books. They were still using most of them. The funny thing is how her way of dressing changed while she was going to class. I mean, I always liked Kelly, but when she went to class, she started dressing completely sexy. I mean, she dressed like I was sure she was seeing someone on the side and hired an investigator to follow her. 4 weeks later, the investigator came and handed me a bill for $1,500, our agreed price, whether he found anything or not. I had a check ready for him from the company with the note, "Consultation fee." He looked at it, smiled, then folded the check and put it in his wallet. He then opened his briefcase and handed me an envelope with many photographs. I was shaking. I was afraid of what I would see. Al, the investigator, nodded his head and said, "Continue. I think you will be happy. The only thing your wife is guilty of is flirting with male professors, probably to get better grades. You will see a lot of photos about her turning down classmates, and yes, some of her professors also have no problem telling them no, and that if they insist, she will notify HR, her husband, and the police." It was money well spent. The children studied well and played sports. Connor wasn't shy around girls like I was. Right after our 25th anniversary, things started looking up. Kelly worked as an independent contractor for a local energy company and set her own hours most of the time. 10 years ago, I went into business with Carl George, whose father founded an automation company that designed, manufactured, and repaired packaging equipment. They worked all over the world, which was a little hard on our marriage at first, but soon Carlton, the old man, let me take Kelly with me from time to time, and she really enjoyed these trips together. When Carlton died, he left me half the company, which surprised the hell out of me. I asked Carl at the reading of the will, and he simply smiled and said, "Mickey, my old man knew that you were the reason this company has grown so much in the last 5 years since you started. He knows you are the best around the engineer, and that you don't mind getting your hands dirty. He also left me his eras, his house, his hunting lodge on the lake, his boat, and his muscle car collection. I don't really have to work if I decide not to. Who knows, I might just give you my half or let you buy me out for a very good price." We changed the name to Goes Automation, and our business really expanded, and we were busier than ever. And Carl, one Saturday morning, a number I didn't recognize rang on my cell phone. It was a call from the city jail. It was from Jerry, one of our best craftsmen. I answered the phone and Jerry said, "Mickey, could you come down to the station and help me out? You will need to hire a bondsman since my bond is $10,000. I'll give you your money back. I promise." I told him I would do it. I went down and met with the bondsman, completed the necessary paperwork, and then went to the jail to pick up Jerry. He was still somewhat confused. I noticed that he had two small fingers on his left hand bandaged. "Jerry, can you tell me what happened?" He looked at me and said, "Clancy first. I need something to eat." Clancy's is a wonderful Irish pub that many of us go to. It's been there for ages, plus the food there is just out of this world. My mouth watered at the thought of homemade corned beef with 3 sunny side-up eggs and toast, and when I mentioned it to Jerry, his eyes lit up and he nodded in agreement. When we got to Clancy's, we moved to a booth in the back where I figured we could talk without being overheard. I asked him how he ended up in prison. Jerry put his head in his hands, then looked up and said, "I don't know if you got the report, but yesterday, just before lunch, I was at the Pepsi plant installing new quarter-liter bottling equipment. I blocked the conveyor belt, or so it seemed to me, when one of their maintenance technicians entered the switchgear and manually turned on the starter, while I lay my hand on it with my little finger caught between the roller and the end of the starter. I think my screaming let them know they screwed up. It took them almost half an hour to dismantle the rope and free my arm so I could get to the hospital. An X-ray showed that I had broken my little finger badly in 2 places, so they put a splint on it, then taped it to the next finger, gave me a shot for the pain, plus some heavy pain pills, and told me to go home with instructions to keep it elevated and not work for 4 - 6 days. I looked at him and asked, "So what brought you to prison?" Shaking his head, he said with tears in his eyes, "Have you met Tracy, my fiancée?" I nodded. "Well, I got home a little after 1, and when I opened the door, I heard moaning coming from my bedroom. I looked back and saw a pile of Tracy's clothes and a man on the floor. I walked down the corridor and looked into my bedroom. There she wrote her old boss, Henry. I jumped up and pulled Tracy off the bed, and she started screaming. Henry jumped out of bed. I yelled at them to get the hell out, and they walked towards the living room. I left the door open and grabbed both of them by the hair and literally threw them out the door. They were both naked as the day they were born. They knocked on the door, shouting for me to give them clothes, or at least their phones, so they could call someone, but I didn't care. I turned the stereo up to full volume and opened a beer. Finally, the knocking stopped, and I turned down the music and took one of the pain pills. Beer with this pill really knocked me out. The next thing I knew, someone was knocking on my door again, only I was too groggy to get up. It was the police, and they wanted to come in. I tried to tell them to come back later, but in response, the door flew off its hinges and 4 large policemen burst into the apartment. They pulled me off the couch, turned me over and handcuffed me. They read me my rights, and one of the officers asked where their clothes and belongings were. I said it was in the bathroom. They were actually there. I put them in there, peed on them, and put a bunch of them on. I had difficulty speaking because my speech was slurred, and they asked how much I had drunk. I said 1 beer, and they made me blow into the breathalyzer. He showed that I was not drunk. I pointed to the table where my prescription bottle and instructions from the doctor lay. They took me away and charged me with assault, theft, and destruction of property. I wasn't allowed to call anyone until I went before the judge this morning, and he set bail. The damn judge didn't care that Tracy slept with her boss. That's what you get from a female judge. Then Jerry walked up to the bartender and asked him to call a taxi while I sat there sipping my second cup of coffee. Then Jackie, the bartender, came over with a bottle of Jameson and refilled my coffee. I looked up and asked, "What is this for?" Jackie smiled and said, "Mickey, you look like you need this." I sighed and smiled. She'll definitely get a big tip. Damn, this coffee went so smooth that I raised the cup and asked for more, and Jackie brought me one, although I think it was stronger, but I managed. It had been a long time since I had been drinking heavily, and I was really starting to feel it when a stunning redhead walked into the bar wearing a tight jersey minidress that hugged her body like a second skin. The ends of her red hair were blue and silver. She was about to order a drink when she looked around the bar and saw me. Her eyes lit up, and she asked Jackie something. The next moment, she walked towards me with 2 cups of coffee, exactly the same as my last 2. As she got closer, it became obvious that she was wearing nothing under her dress, and she sat down next to me, holding one of the cups out in front of me and smiling. I finished my first cup and turned to her. She quickly leaned over and kissed me. "Hey, baby, I'm married," I told her. "I know Mickey, me too." Before I could say anything, she was kissing me when she whispered, "Come on, Mickey, let's get out of here." She finished her drink and made me finish mine. I didn't know her, but obviously she knew me, and I was so drunk I wasn't thinking straight. She helped me out of Clancy, and when I looked at Jackie, she said, "Don't worry, Mickey, you weren't here, were you?" My brain didn't quite understand what was happening, but she took me to her car, a big Mercedes, and we drove downtown to the Hilton on the 18th floor. As soon as we entered the room, we began to undress and have sex. When I was finally able to speak, I said, "You're crazy. Do you know what my wife will do to me if she finds out that I cheated on her?" I know I can never cheat again because she will probably hurt me. By the way, you never told me your name. What is your name? She was lying half on top of me, her head on my shoulder, and she said, "My name is Izzy. My husband is transferring here from Seattle, and I arrived early to find a home for us. I looked for your name in the phone book and couldn't believe it. I found you online and found out that you are the owner of Geo, Automation, and when I saw the Go truck near Clancy, I just had to stop by to see if you were there." I looked at her and asked, "And how do you know me?" Izzy smirked, which reminded me of Kelly, but I put it out of my mind. She kissed me and said, "You will understand this, I'm sure. For now, just enjoy the sex. I know I'm going to enjoy you." She picked me up, and we went to the shower. When I got dressed, I looked at her and said, "Izzy, it was a one-time thing. I won't risk Kelly finding out." Izzy smiled and said, "Wanna bet?" I quickly left there and called a taxi to pick up my truck. Luckily, Kelly wasn't home, so I was able to change clothes and start mowing the lawn and pulling out the steaks for our dinner. Kelly texted me that she would be home by 6 o'clock, so I got everything ready and she walked in at 6:15 sharp. Her steak was medium rare, her Cabernet Rose was chilled, her salad was chilled, and her favorite Roquefort dressing was on the side with hot garlic bread, all already on the glass table on our pool patio. I told her that dinner was outside, and she gave me a hot kiss when we sat down for dinner. Kelly didn't say much at first, just enjoyed the food. It was just the way she liked it. I smiled, knowing that I had given her so much pleasure, even though we hadn't had sex in over 2 weeks, or maybe 3. Kelly then stopped eating, slowly took a couple sips of wine, and asked me to pour more, which I gladly did. Kelly looked at me as I took a sip of my Schofferhofer grapefruit beer and said with a smile, "Very nice dinner, Mickey. Tell me, what does this mean? Are you hoping to get lucky with me, or are you having an affair?" "Yes," I choked on my beer. Feigning innocence, I shook my head. "Of course, I hope to spend time with you. How can you even think that I'm cheating on you? I'm not someone who says no all the time. I just hoped you would enjoy the special treatment." I got up and collected the dirty plates and took them to the kitchen. I washed the dishes and Kelly was in her office. After the news, I got ready for bed and lay down, replaying the events of the day in my head. Sometime later, Kelly came in and went into our bathroom. She undressed, put on her flannel pajamas, obviously not for play, and got into bed with me, but remained on her side, facing away from me. It's funny, but with such an avoidance of sex, if I didn't feel so guilty about having sex with Izzy, I would have hired a detective to follow Kelly. Then I thought, it was a one-time thing with her. I will never let this happen again. Maybe I should actually hire a detective to keep an eye on Kelly. The next day at work, I called the same detective, but his rates increased slightly, although he said he would give a discount to a regular customer. I needed to find a temporary replacement for Jerry as he was going to be out all week. I was confident that George could do it because he used to be a foreman, but he asked to be demoted a year ago due to stress. I told him that I would help, and it was just for 1 week, plus I would offer an additional week of vacation. George was one of our older employees and always reliable, so giving him a bonus week of vacation was the least I could do for taking a position he didn't like. George hugged me and said, Boss, you're one in a million. Thank you. You didn't have to." George stopped talking when my cell phone rang and left with another employee to answer his question. I didn't look who was calling, but I quickly recognized the voice. "Hi, Mickey. Are you ready for lunch? I have something very special in preparation for us now. I'm in the parking lot, waiting for you. Please don't keep me waiting," Izzy said so sexy I couldn't think straight. I took a deep breath and let it out, then told myself that no matter how nice she was, divorcing Kelly wasn't worth it. I swallowed and said, "Izzy, I am not going to meet you for lunch, and I will never meet you for sex again. Am I making myself clear?" I thought I heard a sob. Then she said, "Mickey, I know you liked it, right?" I couldn't lie. "Izzy, you, my sweetie, are fantastic, absolutely amazing," I said, smiling at the memory. She said, I want and need you again. Sorry, Izzy, I just can't, I said. There was too much silence, and I asked, Izzy, are you there? She appeared to be crying as she said, Mickey, I didn't want to do this, but you're forcing me. You will continue to date me, and we will continue to have sex. I think it will benefit both of us. Shaking my head, I said, What will you do if I don't agree? Izzy said softly, My hotel room had 4 video cameras connected to the cloud for security, but that night I changed the code so only I can access the files. I also saved it in 2 secure places, plus several flash drives. I wouldn't want your wife to accidentally receive a copy via email or find a flash drive in her purse. Izzy, you won't dare, I said loud enough to attract the attention of a few people around, so I said I had to go back to my office. I could almost feel her controlling smile on the phone when she said, Mickey, you will tell your staff that you have a lunch meeting with a potential business partner and you are not sure how long it will take. Turn off your computer and turn off tracking features on your mobile phone. You have 10 minutes to do this and sit in the front seat of my car. Forward. Fear ruled me. I mean, part of it was fear of getting caught, but part of it was fear of being late because I wanted Izzy. She looked so much like Kelly when we first got married. Damn, I didn't realize how much I missed it until I ended up with Izzy. When I got to her car, in less than 9 minutes if you were wondering, I was greeted by Izzy wearing a black velvet bra and high-waisted black velvet mesh panties. She quickly drove to the Hilton Underground parking lot. Then as soon as we were in the elevator to the 18th floor, Izzy's hands were already in my pants, and my hand was in her panties. When we entered the room, my hands were flying to take off my clothes. Izzy looked at me, grinned, and said, One-time thing, huh? You seem very ready for a repeat. I turned and threw myself at her. We both landed on the bed, rolling around, kissing and laughing, and I told her, Yeah, you're a one-time. Well, no more than once an hour, okay? Room service. I was trying to find my pants when Izzy said, Come in. In the blink of an eye, this beautiful young blonde came into the room with a cart for our lunch. Izzy was completely naked, and I covered my arms by holding part of the sheet. The blonde looked at us and asked Izzy, Are you in trouble here, or are you just having fun? Izzy smiled and said, No problem, just a lot of fun. It's a pity that you work and can't join us. I thought, Oh shit, Izzy will throw us out of here. We'll be in the papers, and Kelly and the whole town will know about my affair. Then, as if to confirm my fears, the young employee answered the phone and, covering the receiver so that I could not hear what she was saying, hung up, looked at Izzy, then at me and smiled, beginning to unbutton her skirt, then her blouse. I was looking at this blonde who had a good body, not too big breasts. At that moment, another girl came up to us and asked, Can I try it? I replied, Okay, but you need to ask her. By the way, what is your name? My name is Patty or Patricia, but I prefer Patty. Your wife has already told me that she wants me to seduce you, so relax and enjoy the ride. Not many men have such a sexy and generous wife as yours, she managed to say. Finally, I was able to catch my breath, and with a big smile, I told them, My sweet, sweet young women, on the day that I have to die, this is how I want it to happen. The 2 sexiest girls in the world lead me to the last exit. This is the perfect ending, I would say. We stopped to share beef Wellington, Yukon Gold mashed potatoes with morel mushrooms, asparagus hollandaise with caviar, and fresh buttered donuts. For dessert, there were 2 bowls of white chocolate, milk chocolate, and dark chocolate mousse, which was mostly eaten off the body rather than off spoons. The next week, Izzy picked me up and took me to her new home. He was great. It stood almost in the center of 35 acres of hay fields and gardens. The house was a very large ranch with 2 large barns, a swimming pool, and 2 pool houses. Yes, I was very impressed. I looked at her as she walked me through the house and asked, Izzy, what does your husband do? Oh, I'm not quite sure, Mickey. I know that he travels a lot and constantly leaves and returns at different times. I've heard him speak many languages, Sometimes it seems like I don't know the man I married, and he doesn't talk about it. He spoils me a lot, and we have almost unlimited funds. I know he wants to invest his money in some business to make it look legit. He just needs to hide them for a few years, say as a loan to a reputable company. Call it an investment in improvement, she said. I looked at her and said, Izzy, you're his front line and all our games were just a way to get me to let him invest in the company. I stood there, my heart almost breaking in two, although Izzy looked no better. Izzy put her arm around my neck, holding me tightly to her, and, sobbing, said, No, 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 no. Honestly, I didn't know he was interested in your business until he called last night and said that you are one of the top 3 on his list, and that he thought that since Carl usually agreed with you, you could talk him into letting you buy out Carl's share. I already met you and had to fulfill my fantasy. Don't you understand? I just had to do it. What fantasy? I asked her. Izzy simply shook her head and walked towards the front door. She opened it and looked at me angrily. I reached her, stopped, and asked, Izzy, honey, what did I say or do that upset you so much? You will understand this someday, I'm sure, she said, abruptly closing the door. Almost no pop, but close. The following Tuesday, Izzy called me on my cell phone and asked, Mickey, I'm sorry I got angry. Please let me make amends. Will you come to my place for lunch? I just picked up a couple of double corned beef sandwiches from Clancy and they're waiting for you. Please tell me you will arrive quickly. The dessert will be guaranteed to be delicious. I knew what Izzy meant by dessert. I rang the doorbell and Izzy opened it, standing in a silk kimono. I followed her into the kitchen, where she took the sandwiches out of the toaster along with the chips, put them on plates, and took a couple of bottles of stout from the refrigerator. She seemed really hungry because she ate the sandwich faster than I did, although she left the chips and the top half of the bun untouched. I smiled at her as I took the last sip of that golden nectar from the bottle and said, You really weren't kidding about being hungry, but I noticed that you didn't eat the chips and most of the muffin. Why? Izzy smiled and said, I didn't want to be full before dessert, stupid. With these words, she stood up, walked over to me, and pulled me towards her, kissing me, unfastening my belt, and my hands plunged into her kimono. I took off my shoes and pants, picked her up, and we headed to her bedroom, taking off the rest of my clothes along the way. Izzy fell forward onto my chest, and we kissed tenderly. She lay with her head on my chest, and we were still connected. Izzy looked up and asked, What's wrong, Mickey? I thought you'd be happy with what we just did. You don't look very happy right now. I leaned over and kissed her nose. Izzy rolled onto her side, resting her head on my shoulder. I said, Izzy, as much as I want to continue, I really can't do this anymore. The guilt is killing me, and so will Kelly if she ever finds out. Please don't get me wrong, but we really need to stop this. Izzy screamed, No! And jumped out of bed, heading to the bathroom. I got dressed and was waiting for her in the kitchen when she finally came out in yoga pants and a sports bra. She was crying and her eyes were puffy and red. With her arm around my neck, she looked up and said, Are you really serious? You love your wife so much that you are ready to give up on me for her. Mickey, she's a lucky woman. I know John cheats on me, and I'm pretty sure he knows I have fun with others sometimes, but honestly, with you, it's more than that. Mickey, I love you, and if you ever want to continue or find yourself alone, you can always contact me. She walked me to the door, and I returned to work. I thought a lot the rest of the day. The next 2 weeks went very smoothly as I tried to forget about Izzy and focus more on getting the business organized with the right manager so Kelly and I could take some time off. I would bring home travel brochures so Kelly and I could discuss them and decide where to go and relax. We were almost 50 years old, but still in good shape. I also hoped that the change of scenery might put my wife in a romantic mood. Kelly didn't seem very interested in traveling. I was at work when the detective came. This time it surprised me because the clothes looked exactly the same as the face, only younger. Mr. O'Brien? I asked. Yes, I'm O'Brien. You are the one who hired me. Ob One Consulting, said the young man. Oh, sorry, the number I had was Charlie's Investigations. Looks like I misheard the recording when I left all the information. I still couldn't believe how much this young man looked like Charlie when he first investigated the Kelly case for me. Then he stunned me by saying, "Look, Mr. O'Sullivan, I looked into my father's case before I took on this investigation. To be honest, I almost didn't check it out. I think you'll be glad I did this. My bill is $2,500 with your repeat discount. Cash is preferred, but since you didn't know about the price change, I'll let you write a check, but it has to be good." I went to the safe, but there was only $2,000 in it, so I gave it to him and wrote a check for the balance. He threw the envelope on my desk and left my office. Since he said it was good news, I thought he meant it like last time, so I just threw the package in the back drawer. Well, he said I'd be glad he investigated Kelly, right? At home, everything went as usual, if once every 2 or 3 weeks can be called the norm, but otherwise everything was in order. Connor is in the Air Force, married to Louise, and she's expecting a baby, so Kelly is excited about becoming a grandmother. Aaron joined the Navy and became a submariner right out of high school. It's funny, even though she hated rules and taking orders, we get rave letters from her commanders about what a pleasure it was to work with her and how pleased they are with her rapid rise in rank. We wrote to her about Aaron not reading or acknowledging our letters and asked her bosses to see if counseling could help her. It was Saturday afternoon, and now I had very little to do around the house. I hired a gardener to take care of the lawn and bushes near the office, and he came to our house every Friday to make sure our yard was in tip-top shape before the weekend. This made my life a lot easier. So I was sitting by the pool enjoying a glass of Maker's Mark OTR when I heard Kelly scream as she walked into the house. I heard other voices and realized that she had brought someone home. "Mickey, Mickey, Mickey," screamed Kelly. "You won't believe who I met in town. This is my little sister Isabella and her husband John." Kelly was pulling Isabella, or Izzy, by the hand, and I couldn't help but say, "Izzy, what are you doing here?" Then he quickly fell silent, realizing his mistake. I know Kelly noticed this, but I'm sure John didn't understand. I knew Kelly was looking at Izzy and me and caught the expressions on our faces. At first it was not very noticeable, but then her face began to express anger. You could almost see the steam rising from under her collar. Somehow my wife made it through dinner without exploding, although at times it was difficult to hear her through clenched teeth. I knew there would be hell after they left. Our looks clearly gave us away. My wife was not stupid. Kelly actually clenched her fists when John mentioned that Izzy had been in town for a month looking for a house for them as he was looking for a business to buy and settle down, maybe even start a family. He playfully slapped Izzy's ass as he said that. As they packed up to leave, John took a few things out to the car and warmed it up. Kelly leaned close to Izzy's ear and said, "You will be here tomorrow morning so we can talk, right? Really, little sister?" I saw the fear on her face and wondered how I would cope on my own. At least Kelly was considerate enough to give them time to leave before she attacked me. She screamed, cried, and hit me on the chest. "How could you? Damn you, Mickey O'Sullivan. How the hell could you sleep with my little sister? Why, for God's sake? Can you give me a good reason and be honest?" Kelly was crying, and I could see how much it hurt her. I tried to hug her, but she punched me in the face several times until I grabbed her wrists, and then she headbutted me, and I let her go and stepped back. She rushed into our bedroom and locked the door. It was a regular internal lock and would have been easy to open, but I decided it was best to leave her alone, so I went downstairs and cleaned up the kitchen and living room. I poured myself a strong glass of Jameson with ice and walked into our bedroom. I could still hear Kelly crying, so I continued walking down the hallway to my office, which also serves as my home office. I opened my computer and saw a new letter from Isabella Montgomery. I thought for a long time whether to open it or not. I drank about half of my drink before I finally clicked on the message. It read, "My dear Mickey, I never wanted to create problems between you and my sister. I really couldn't believe that you didn't recognize me. I've been in love with you ever since you danced with me at her wedding all those years ago. I read Kelly's letters telling me what a great lover you are, and it only made me feel worse as I wanted you more and more, even though I had several boyfriends and now John is my third husband. But you, Mickey, were more than I could ever imagine. I thought that we would have a fleeting affair and that's all. But you ignited something in me that I can't explain. I can't wait for us to be together again. I know this is stupid and may never happen again, but I can't ask you to leave Kelly for me. It would be wrong. I will always love you with all my heart. Please delete this as soon as you read it. Yours forever, Izzy. My short answer was, I will never forget you either. I then deleted both emails and made sure I emptied the trash and any traces of those emails. That night, I slept very poorly in the guest room and woke up to the smell of bacon. It seemed strange if Kelly was mad at me, so I quickly put on my pants and slippers and headed to the kitchen. I carefully looked around the corner to make sure nothing was flying my way and heard Kelly say in a rather sweet voice, "Come in, Mickey, your breakfast is almost ready. 2 soft-boiled eggs, bacon and crispy hash brown, and your toast lightly toasted to melt the real butter, and coffee without sugar, but with Jameson." I couldn't get Clancy's to deliver their canned beef without a big order in advance, otherwise I would have made it for you too. Kelly led me to the table and sat me down, taking a frying pan from the stove. Expecting food to fly at me, I saw her carefully place the food on top of the hash browns, just the way I like them. I saw her quickly beat 3 egg whites and place them on toast lightly spread with cream cheese. She grabbed her breakfast and a cup of coffee and sat down opposite me, reaching for a folder from the closet behind her. She was wearing only a tank top and panties, which looked very sexy. There was an expression on Kelly's face that I couldn't understand. It seemed like 1,000 thoughts were running through her head, and she struggled with herself, deciding what to say or do. Several times she started to speak, but stopped, just looking at me or staring into space. It hurt me so much it wasn't funny. Finally, I took her hand and said, "Kelly, yes, I really screwed up, and I can't tell you how much I regret it. I already told Izzy, that is Isabella, that everything is over between us, because I love you too much and feel too much guilt by cheating on you. Honey, I want you to know that she threatened to send you a video of us having sex for the first time, even though I was very drunk, at least in the beginning. The second time she threatened me, saying that she had videos of us playing the first time, and it would be a shame if they accidentally ended up in your email. To prevent this from happening, she wanted me to meet her again at her hotel for lunch. As you can guess, she wanted me for lunch, at least at first. When the young blonde brought our lunch, Izzy, Isabella walked up to her, completely naked, and whispered something in her ear. I stood there, trying to cover myself with my hands and some part of the sheet, I think. Then this girl makes a call and quickly begins to undress. Kelly interrupted me and said, "It's okay, Mickey. Since you're close enough to my little sister to sleep with her, I guess you can call her Izzy." I lowered my head and there was complete silence. Then Kelly made a go-ahead motion with her finger, so I said, "Well, I was playing with Izzy and Patty that afternoon and watching them play. Izzy was really excited about Patty." Kelly looked at me with disgust, then said, "So you really like watching 2 women play with each other, huh? Tell me, what is your favorite fantasy?" I smiled and said, "That's easy, Kelly. For watching girls, I'd like to see a girl pleasure you." That's when I looked up and Kelly shook her head and said, "Pervert, but that's another topic. Do you realize how much you hurt me by sleeping with my little sister? Do you often seduce young women? I know you travel sometimes for work, but I want to know about every time you cheated on me. Otherwise, I swear I will shake everything out of you in a divorce." I lowered my head, quickly grabbed her hand, and, looking into her face, said, "Kelly, my love, yes, I failed, but until the day you brought Izzy with you, I really didn't know that she was your little sister. I didn't dare tell her about the similarities in bed, 2 sisters 20 years apart. Kelly, Izzy was the first and only person I cheated with. I swear my life on this. It seemed like you and I were growing apart, and you were always busy, and you never had time for me. No, I wasn't looking for this, it just happened. Or rather, Izzy was looking for me." I managed to say before Kelly interrupted me. Okay, that's all. She then opened her laptop and started typing. When she was satisfied, Kelly took her iPhone and took photos of me, then herself, sent them to herself, and pasted them into the documents she was creating. She pressed the seal and went into the office to pick up the printouts, while I sat there, not understanding where this was all leading. When she returned, Kelly threw papers in front of me that said, "This is not a negotiation. This is a full disclosure of information, violation of which will result in untold penalties. Since you have already admitted to having sex outside of our marriage at least 4 times, I see no other option but divorce. There is another option, but it is entirely up to you. Since you cheated on me 4 times, I will choose 4 dates to go on, and you will not be able to control what I will do with them or how long I will be with them." Then she added, "Mickey, maybe I'll make you sit in the room and watch, or stand outside the hotel window and look inside. Maybe I'll bring it home and make you watch it. How do you like that, dear? I talked to my friend Margaret last night, and this is what she did instead of divorcing Clark when she caught him cheating." I narrowed my eyes at how vulgar my sweet wife suddenly became. Did I want to go through with the divorce, or let her be corrupted in the way she put it, or what? I looked up and Kelly said, "Okay, Mickey, are you ready to sign the copies, because I called our friends Max and Dave to witness these documents for us. Dave the notary." I said, "Why the hell do we need documents, Kelly?" She smiled and said, "This is Margaret's offer, just a little insurance so you can't change your mind. This document is a contract and, as such, is binding and cannot be changed." At that moment, I heard Max and Dave knocking on the back door. As I led them to the table, I asked Kelly, "What if something happens to make me change my mind?" Kelly smiled, handed me the document, and a pen said, "A contract is a contract," and said, "Just sign here, Mickey. Make it easier for everyone. If you think you can come up with something to stop me or gain forgiveness, I will be happy to resume negotiations with you. Come on, Mickey, make a decision. Max and Dave can't wait long or be late for their jobs." I took a pen and reluctantly signed the 4 copies in front of me. Dave quickly assured them, and we each took 1 copy. Once Max and Dave got theirs, they left. I was still wearing my lounge pants and Kelly was wearing the same clothes. Since it was Sunday, I decided to invite Kelly to dinner and went to our bedroom, where I found her in a red tight dress. Her hair was styled in cascading combs, and she wore red cat stockings and red stilettos with 4-inch collars. Looking at her, I asked, "Honey, how did you know I was going to invite you to dinner?" Kelly smiled and said, "Sorry, Mickey, but you're late. Brock, the new sales manager, has already invited me to dinner tonight. Actually, he's been asking me out for weeks, and I just called him and said yes to tonight. I have to be home before midnight." Then she walked past me, smelling so damn good I couldn't stand it. I mean, how could she? She just forced me into this damn deal, and now she's already going on a date with a guy. I followed her down the stairs, and she went to the restroom to check her makeup and hair again. I poured myself a very tall glass of Jameson and the white wine Kelly had asked for, then moved into the living room near the front door while Kelly stayed in the kitchen. When the doorbell rang, I opened the door, and this rather tall, very athletic, good-looking young man shook my hand and tried to give me a man shake. Only my years in the field and playing sports made him realize that I was the alpha male in this respect. Before anything could happen, Kelly walked past me and kissed my cheek, then turned and gave Brock a tongue-twisting kiss before leading him out the door, his hand going up under her dress. I felt nauseous. I couldn't believe how slowly time passed. I would have sworn it was half an hour or more, but in reality it was only 5 or 10 minutes. This agony continued until midnight came and Kelly was still missing, and there was no call. Then my cell phone rang. It was Kelly's number, but it was Brock on the line. "Sorry, buddy, but we're a little late. I'll bring her home as soon as I can. You know what she can be like. What a wild cat you have on your hands, mate." I tried to call back, but it went to voicemail. It was already after 2 when he finally brought her home. Her hair and clothes were in complete disarray, and she smelled of sex. She kissed him deeply at the door before letting him through the door and dragging me into our bedroom. Kelly took off her dirty, wrinkled dress, was left without underwear, and demanded, "Take me, Mickey. Take me now. I thought you would like it if I had sex with others. Or do you only like other women? You know what? Next week, Margaret set me up on a date with Malik Cooper. You know, that former basketball player who now coaches our state basketball team. He's my boyfriend this weekend, and Margaret says he's 12 inches. How would you like to look at this, Mickey?" I felt nauseous and got out of bed, found some Tums, and left the room. I couldn't sleep with her that night. I knew I had cheated, but she did everything she could to humiliate me. Monday was a hard day at work. Luckily, I was so busy that I didn't have time to think about what happened. When 5 o'clock arrived, I turned off the computer, half wishing I didn't have to go home and face the monster Kelly had become. But it was a monster that I had unwittingly created, as I reasoned. I walked in the door, and there were no dinner smells. I called out to Kelly, but got no answer, even though the light was on in our bedroom. I put down my computer and coat and headed over there to see Kelly standing in front of our full-length mirror admiring herself. When she realized I was standing behind her, she turned and said, "Do you like it?" That night, I tried to initiate sex, but Kelly said, "Sorry, honey, but I'm saving myself for this weekend. I want to remember every delicious second of this moment. I'll take care of you when I get home. You know, you like it when I come with someone else." My stomach churned, and I turned away from her and fell asleep. The next day I was working and looking for paper clips, thinking they were in the back of my drawer, and when I reached in I found a package from OB1 Consulting. It was still sealed. I turned it over in my fingers a little, and then, deciding that it might contain important information, I opened it and almost exploded. There were more than 25 photos of Kelly having sex with men and women, mostly men, including several times with Brock. All of the photographs were time and date stamped, and the back usually included locations as well as the names, addresses, and phone numbers of the people Kelly was with. There was a letter there. It read, "Mr. O'Sullivan, here's the evidence you need. I followed your wife in meetings with several men and a couple of times with girlfriends. From what I have been able to gather, she and your partner Carl have been having an affair for the past 5 years, and a few years ago Kelly began to expand her playing field. I have several well-placed audio and video cameras and have many incriminating conversations between them. I also have a lot of Kelly's phone conversations and deleted computer files. She has been sexually active with at least 15 men and 4 women in the past year." I thought, this hypocritical little bitch. She's mad at me for cheating on me, but she's been having sex with just about anyone for the last 5 years. I shuddered at this, but decided to leave work early. Popped in for 2 canned beef sandwiches with chips from Clancy's before arriving home and settled in with a large glass of Jameson ginger ale. I had just taken my first bite when Kelly walked in. She was carrying several shopping bags. I looked at her and said, "Hi, honey. Went shopping? Dinner here in the living room. I have something to show you." Kelly smiled and said, "Okay, I have something to show you too." As she walked over to the coffee table, she pulled out a dress that was cut so low that her belly button was probably showing, plus it was so sheer that everything showed through. She squealed and said, "Won't Malik like this?" I looked at her and said, "Kelly, sit down. Your date with Malik is canceled." She stammered, "WHW, what do you mean, canceled? We have a contract. You can't back down." I held up the contract and said, "You said we could renegotiate it if something happened." "Well, honey, something happened. You said you've never been unfaithful to me, and that's the reason you wanted your 4 dates, right?" Kelly nodded. I pressed play on the VCR and our 75-inch screen lit up, showing Kelly having sex with 2 guys and screaming for them to take her harder. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her eyes were wide open, but she could not say a word. "Come on, Kelly, tell me about you and my partner Carl." To my friend Carl, the guy I would do anything for, and now I find out that he made fun of me all these years, making me a cuckold. Kelly sobbed like crazy, then said, "It wasn't like that in the beginning, Mickey. Remember, Carl's wife, Grace, died and Carl was experiencing severe PTSD. I went to him to console him and found Carl already with the bottle. He insisted that I join him, and at first I refused, but he kept insisting and I finally agreed. Carl kept talking about what a good wife Grace was and how much they loved each other. Then he would start crying, and I would hug him, trying to comfort him. He stood up, and I rubbed his back, and he slowly walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, and I sat next to him, and he started crying again, and we hugged. Then he just pulled me onto the bed and continued to cry even though he called me Grace. He started kissing my neck and ears, then his hand slid under my skirt, and before I could stop him, I found myself reacting to him, and soon we were making love. It wasn't as good as you and I, but Carl really appreciated it, and it made me feel good. I hope you can forgive me. I only did it to help him, honestly. I hope you believe me." "What about the rest?" I asked. Kelly lowered her head and said, "Honestly, I realized a couple of years ago that if I've been playing with Carl all this time without you suspecting, then I can find someone else to play with. Then I started letting men pick me up in bars or meet guys at work. I didn't think about what could happen if you found out about my cheating. Then when I found out you slept with my little sister, I went crazy. I know it was hypocritical of me, but I was so angry at both of you. I wanted you to suffer." I looked at my wife in disbelief and asked, "What about Malek? What is so important about it to you?" Kelly lowered her head and said, "Margaret said that if I do this, you will become more submissive to my desires." "I'll do what?" I asked. She said I should go on a date with Malek, turn him on, and then bring him home and make you watch me have sex with him. Tell me, Mickey, would you like to watch me do this? I thought for a second and said, maybe that would be sexy. Kelly smiled and said, be that as it may, but I'd like to try it at least once. I looked at her and asked, how often did you and Carl have sex? Every day, twice a week, once a week, how often and where? Looking away, Kelly said, at first it was about twice a week. Then the second and third year we slowed down to twice a month and sometimes at lunchtime. In the last couple of years, it mostly happens when you leave town. I looked at her and said, Kelly, you are saying that you have cheated on me almost 200 times over the past years, am I correct? I watched as she calculated it in her head. She finally nodded. I handed her the agreement and said, I'm going to change this agreement to say that because of your infidelity, I will have 200 free dates, either with Izzy or any other woman of my choosing. Or should I contact my lawyer so he can contact your lawyer? Kelly sat crying with her head in her hands when Izzy entered. She walked up to Kelly and hugged her. Izzy kissed Kelly's forehead and asked, what can I do for my big sister to make her day better? Kelly wiped the tears from her face and said, Izzy, take Mickey to our bedroom and have sex with him until you're completely exhausted. I expect you to do this regularly. Understood. Now Izzy looked between me and Kelly, trying to understand what was happening, as she thought that she was about to be reprimanded by her older sister. Instead, she received a big smile and a nod from me, and we headed upstairs. We were having sex when Kelly joined us. What a day it was, and it was repeated many times. Izzy was right. Her husband John was often on the road, which gave her plenty of time to play with both Kelly and me. And honestly, Kelly and I got along better. I'm not sure where we spent more time at Izzy's house or at ours, but we had a good time. Then I came home one evening to find John there, as well as Kelly and Izzy's parents. When I walked in, I asked, nice to see you again. What brings you to the States? And then Bree, Kelly, and Izzy's mother said, when we heard the news that our daughter was pregnant, we had to come to congratulate her. Plus, we wanted to say hi to you too and the baby's father. I was confused, I thought. Is Izzy pregnant? This can't be my child, right? No, it must be her husband's child. It must be John. I leaned over to Kelly and whispered, okay, honey, whose baby is this? Kelly was making drinks and sandwiches for everyone, but she leaned over to kiss me on the cheek, then whispered in my ear, "You're a fool." John was sterilized during his first marriage, but he is delighted at the prospect of becoming a father and thinks she got pregnant through artificial insemination. While John was still traveling around the world on his business, I went and ran into Carl. I walked in, slamming my right fist into my left palm, and Carl's eyes widened. He started sweating and fidgeting with his phone. While he was fiddling with it, I snatched it from his hands and said, "You won't need this, Carl." "WHWW, what happened, Mickey?" he asked. "Carl, I just found out that Kelly has been cheating on me for years, and when I find out who I'm with, I'll put an end to it. Any man who touches another man's wife is one of the lowest creatures on this earth. Don't you agree, Carl?" I saw him sweating like a pig on a spit. Carl asked, although trembling a little, "What are you going to do, Mickey?" I patted Carl on the back and said, "You and I will hunt the bastard, and when we find him, we will beat him up and maybe cut something off of him. Do you think he'll like it?" Beads of sweat ran down Carl's face. He fiddled with his hands and wiped them on his jeans, as they were also sweating like crazy. Carl finally cleared his throat and stood up and said, I would love to help you, Mickey, but I really should have called you already. I'm finally retiring, and I'm going to sell you my share of the company for $1. Give me $1, quickly." I did this, and he signed a waiver giving everything to me. I looked at Carl and said, "Are you staying in the area? You could help me find who did this." Carl was looking for a way out and looked around, saying, No, I'm going to sell this big old house and a couple of cars and buy an RV and go to California, maybe Oregon. I think it's time for a change of scenery." I looked at him and said, "Carl, are you going to sell your 2 cars? Which? Maybe I'm interested. And what about Carlton's hunting lodge on the lake? Is it for sale too?" I realized that Carl had not thought through his stocks, and I played with him. He hesitated, then said, Well, Mickey, I know how much you liked Carlton's GTX. Why don't I sell it to you for, say, $20,000, and I'll throw it in a hunting lodge at Eagle Lake. Agree?" I fingered my chin and said, "I don't know, Carl. I came here hoping you'd help me find the bastard who had Kelly, and you dump the company on me and leave me to deal with all this, plus take care of the GTX and the hunting lodge. I'm going to be torn apart to deal with all this crap." Carl put his hand on my shoulder and said, Mickey, I'll take $15,000 for you. You must go to your beloved wife and forgive her. If she didn't love you, she wouldn't still be with you. Doesn't that tell you anything?" I pulled away from him and said in mock anger, "All that tells me is that she likes my earnings. I thought that you were my friend and would help me, but apparently you have more important things to do. Well, thanks for the company. Enjoy California." In my mind, I thought, "You are a useless bastard." I watched as he opened his large safe and took out the paperwork for the GTX and signed it. Then he found the documents for the hunting lodge and signed them, handing me 2 packages. I didn't open them until I stopped at a park about a mile away. Opening the package on the GTX first, I looked at the documents. My jaw dropped when I saw that old man Carlton bought this GTX at the Barrett-Jackson auction in Arizona for $1.7 million, and I just bought it and the lodge for $15,000. I opened the package for the lodge and saw that taxes on it were $9,400 a year, making it worth over $1 million. I think he paid me to be with Kelly, but I probably wouldn't call her easy. I hired a good business manager to run the company and also bought a big camper van, and Kelly, Izzy, and little JJ, and I went traveling around our beautiful country, and sometimes John would meet us, and he and Izzy would rent a room in hotel for a few days, and then he left again, and I stayed with 2 ladies. I was glad that none of them were ever jealous. I spent many nights with both of them in the same bed or watching them enjoy each other. It was so erotic and turned me on every time. Just before JJ's 5th birthday, John showed up while we were in Salt Lake City. He told Izzy that he had just bought a house for her and JJ near downtown Seattle and asked her to move there with him and start a family so JJ could go to school. John said he'd buy them tickets, but I said, "Hell no. We'll just start this van and head west. Let's go, carriage. Everyone laughed, even JJ. 4 days later, we were in Seattle in this office building. The house John bought was not a home in the traditional sense. It was a 6-story office building that he planned to turn into their home, and it did offer great views of the ocean and the dock. He already had architectural drawings on the walls showing different ideas, and he explained them to Izzy, getting her feedback on how she wanted things to look and what colors she preferred. John held JJ in his arms like his son and showed him his room, and JJ was delighted and hugged John. Kelly saw me watching them, took my hand, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Mickey, you may be the biological father, but John is JJ's father. You have 2 children. Don't ruin it. Please." We decided to move back home so I could take over Geo's automation again, mainly to oversee things. As I sat in my office, I thought, Kelly and I were getting along well again, and the sex between us was incredible. We rebuilt trust and reignited the spark in our relationship by spending time together and going on dates with each other. In other words, life was returning to normal, if you can call it normal to have bugs in your wife's phone, purse, and car, as well as hidden cameras throughout the house. It's all for safety, you know? Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.